So next up is somebody I have now known for 5 years. We first met when he was at the London Stock Exchange, pioneering, early day pioneering for things like experience management and indeed happy signals. So Mark Bewick is I would say he's called the senior ITSM advisor. He's also really an evangelist. You know, he loves this stuff more than anybody else I know, I think. And as you all know, Happy Signals is a global founding partner for us and a major sponsor for SDI. So we're very happy to have Mark come along. Mark, you ready to take it on?
I am. Thank you, Alan. Hopefully you can see my screen and you can see me and hear me. Is that good?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. So thank you for having me on this session. This is a second part of this program, I think, and I know you had Sammy here in February. So I'm not Sammy. I've got less hair than Sammy. I'm going to cover some of the material that Sammy covered because I understand that some people might not have been on the first session. So it's important we cover some of the fundamentals that we do. I'm not sure if anyone's seen the video we've got. If you want to take a snap of that QR code, we've got a really cool video starring this man about ITXM. So I'm here to talk about ITXM or not ITXM, decision making and starting the journey. So to give you a bit of an introduction into what ITXM is and some of the issues and pain points it tries to address. So we've only got 15 minutes or so it's a pretty fast pace, but we'll make it. So who are we? Very, very quickly, we are the leading SaaS platform for human-centric IT experience management. We essentially allow organizations, of which there's a few named at the bottom, some big organizations and some medium and small organizations too, to capture employee data to understand how happy they are with IT. So not just ticket-based, but laptops and computers, the whole 360, the enterprise apps, the collaboration with IT and what have you. We bring that together and we crunch it with technology data and operational data, and we help organizations understand where their employees are happiest, least happy, where they're losing most time, where they're gaining most time, or losing less time, I should say, they're more productive. So, like we say here, we've been rolling for about 10 years now. We had our 10th anniversary last October time, and we, at the moment, I think we get feedback from an employee somewhere in the world every 3 seconds. So the count is huge in terms of how much data we now have. And fundamentally, the statement here from Sammy is that we believe IT decisions should start with people. So this people-first approach, we've been measuring technology and processes for years, if not decades, certainly decades. And we know everything about the technology, we know everything about our processes by now, and we know a bit about our people. But we focus here and bring in the data from processes and technology to help us understand the decisions that organizations may make to improve the life of their work life of their people. By that I mean the employees. Of course, we hear lots of statements around happier employees equals happier customers. And we're all about happy, so you see our brand is very pink. I've got a pink background, I've got a pink t-shirt, I've got pink wallpaper on my screen. So you'll notice our brand is very, very, very pink and people orientated in this respect and happiness orientated. So we'll talk a little bit about what's termed the watermelon effect. I'm assuming there's a lot of people on the call that know what it is, but there'll be some that don't. So I'll cover this quite quickly. So the old way of measuring IT focused around the things on the right. This is the IT on the right. Our systems are all at 99.8% happy days. Partners, internal service providers, external service providers saying, we're meeting our OLAs and SLAs, everything's great. And vendors coming in saying, we've got all this new tech, we can solve all your problems for you. But at the same time, we have people in the business, employees saying, IT just doesn't work. I've mentioned it a number of times on LinkedIn. You're a cost center. We've heard this all the time. IT, you're a cost center. You're not contributing to the business. Then the CFO and the finance folks come in and say, we need to save costs. We have to look at IT, right? Because they're a cost center. And we hear HR saying people are leaving because the employee experience just isn't good from an IT perspective. In fact, I've left a role, I won't tell you which role, I've left a role partly because the IT there was terrible. So I've actually witnessed some of this in action. And going back to what Alan was saying, when I was at the London Stock Exchange Group, the company I was at before that, this is when the aha moment for me came when I had 10 service managers working, looking after corporate shared services, and they were spending 80% of their time handling escalations and frustrations with our colleagues, our employees in the business. So, and that was despite the fact we were spending tens of millions having it looked after by a partner. So, in a way, that was my aha moment. The fact that yes, all of our metrics were green, the outside skin of the melon, but frankly, the employees weren't happy at all. It didn't look that way from their perspective. It was very much a red report if you looked at it from their perspective. So we have this challenge of proving our value of IT to the business, and to become trusted by the business. And at the same time, we want our IT teams, partners, vendors to be working on things that matter to the business, not just hitting a number. This is never the whole IT experience management, XLAs and everything else is not about hitting numbers at all. It's about achieving good outcomes for employees and making them happier at work. So 10 years ago, when Sammy set all this up with a couple of other folks, they looked at two metrics that really do enough. And I was very close at one point in my former role to ditching all of the KPIs we had in favor of happiness of employees, because frankly, if employees are happy, then all the rest, you can give a bit on that, right? And in fact, we did. In our contracts with our third-party service provider, we pushed for happiness above everything else. If you hit happiness, I'll certainly be less punishing, shall we say, on not hitting MTTR targets for P1, P2, P3 incidents. If they're happy, that's the most important thing. The other side to that is productivity. And we know there's a crunch all the time to save money, to make things easier, to make things more efficient. So the two metrics we have is the happiness part and the bit that I talked about, the saving the money, the making sure we're doing the right thing, making sure people are happy in their roles, making them more productive. Funny story on that point, because sometimes happiness and productivity conflict. So I went out to Geneva once in one of my former roles, and I sat down with a guy who was using Siebel at the time, and he was his job was to process orders. So he would sit and he would go do all of the input into his sales ticket. He would submit it, and I was watching him do it because I wanted to understand how he worked or how they worked. And he pushed the button and the hourglass started, right? The hourglass started in the middle of the screen. And I said, how long is this going to take then? He said, 50 to 60 minutes. Let's go and get a cup of coffee or go and get lunch. And so from his perspective, he was probably the least productive person in the company. However, he was over the moon. He was so happy that the systems were forcing him down this route where he could go and take coffees every push of a button. So sometimes they don't match, but you get my point that generally speaking, happiness is where we need to go. That's how people feel about the IT. And productivity, where do they lose most time? Let's nail that bit. Let's see if we can make the two happen, make them happy and productive. So, and that's the stuff that Sammy covered in the 28th of February session, similar to this one. We in my recent visit to Helsinki, where our company is based, on the last morning of leaving the office to the airport, I got chatting to a guy called Zachary. I know you know him, Alan. And one of the lines was, so why did you get into this, Mark? How did you get into ITXM? And I subsequently put something on LinkedIn about this. But frankly, we talked about pain points, and an original picture of this, I wish I could have had it on the screen, because it was on a whiteboard, and it was like a measuring jar with red liquid going into it. The red liquid, from my perspective, was the escalations. So like I said, 80% of my team's time was spent on escalations. So you get to a point where the pain threshold's met, and in my case, it had exceeded. I would have expected to have escalations and frustrations and cost involved in service management. Absolutely. I didn't expect it to be 80%. I expected it to be somewhere south of 20, 30%. So I didn't tolerate that. So I had a choice at that point in time. So these cost, frustration, escalations can be pain points. There's probably many others, but I had a choice to make. And when we did the whiteboard exercise, we had a green pill and a red pill, but conscious that pills have a view with them now. So we went with the traffic light approach. So I could have carried on doing what I was doing. The decision could have been just to keep going, because frankly, it was controllable. It was easy. I didn't need to make any changes to do that. I could have just said, okay, metrics are green. We just keep spending 80% of our time in escalation management and frustration and people leaving left, right, and center. Nearly all of those guys on the team and girls on the team wanted to leave. They didn't expect service management to be escalation management and complaints management. And it doesn't rock the boat at all. It's because we're familiar with it. The metrics we've been using for many years have been there since, 20, 25 years, I think, when we talked to Doug Rabbold about it. It's 25 years these metrics haven't really changed the KPIs that we know and love. So I could have kept in this sort of SLA KPI wonderland that we were in. My bonus at the time was based on hitting those green targets, as is most people in that world. So, and also vendors, of course, they're masters at hitting these metrics because credits are against them not hitting them, right? And very often they're not in favor of, there is cases where there might be rewards for achieving them. So you're rocking the boat, you're changing the status quo, and it's not comfortable at all. But in the end, if I carried on doing that, it would have kicked the can down the road forever. It didn't move us forward. I'd have lost half the team for sure. They'd have come to me at some point and said, why are we spending 10, 20, 30 million over here with a service provider and spending another 6, 7, 800,000 US dollars here managing escalations? So the time and money that we couldn't spend in other areas making life better was spent kicking that can down the road. And that just didn't seem right at all. So we get to a point where the threshold is met in these pain points. Another one is cost. Another good one is cost. So we can no longer afford to replace every laptop we have in this organization every 3 years. So what do? We have to find out if the device over 3-year-old still makes people happy. Is it still secure? Is it still able to be patched? For example, is it upgradable? And we need to make sure people are still productive with it. So there's lots of different pain points over here, but there's two I've given you: cost and frustration, and escalations in my case. The flip side of that is to head down the ITXM route. And this was where I was at. This is the green pill of the other example I gave you earlier. The decision was to go green, to do something different. And at the time, I went and met Sammy at an event in Manchester, ITSMF 2018, whatever it was, in Manchester. And I saw his product and I took it away and I thought, oh, I need to do something like this because this is just too much. And I went ahead and spent, the next 6 months sending 5,000 or so emails out to employees after tickets had been resolved. Immediately after, I was running a report every few minutes to look for resolved tickets. Sent 5,000 in 6 months and got I think 1,700 responses back. And I responded to every one of them, whether it's a thank you because they scored 9 or 10, or whether it was a 0 to 6. I would call them and say, how can we help? I've seen what you've said. You've said it was because of X. How can I help further? And the surprise element there is I didn't expect a call back. I never had a clue I was going to get a call back. That pilot approach allowed us then to move into Happy Signals. And now obviously I work for the company because I love everything it tries to achieve. I love the fact it's rocking the boat. I love the fact it's changing things in a way that I enjoy. So the pros of going this route are you will have happier and more productive end users. We've seen that every time. I think the average, I forget now the exact number, but 25% average happiness improvement in the space of a year once people start doing this stuff. You will be able to make better decisions for your IT teams and for your employees and for your CFO and for your leadership team, because you'll know where to spend your time and money. Now, another example might be laptops, like I said earlier. You might realize if we bring operational data into our platform, if we bring the make, model, age, operating system, memory, CPU, everything into our platform, we can then say, yeah, people are happiest with this laptop. And if they're in sales, they're not happy with that laptop. And it's surprising how when you do this over a number of different customers, you see the same devices popping up over and over again as just not fit for purpose, not making people happy. And so there's gold out there in terms of knowing where you should spend your money. Should you take that device off your list, possibly, right? Or look at your build process, or look at whatever, bigger screens, extra peripherals, whatever it might be. So you can make better decisions. You certainly have more motivated IT employees. I mean, often people say people are only going to feed back to a survey if they're really happy or really frustrated. We don't see that. We do see that 75% of the feedback in ticket-based IT, so tickets, incidents and requests and interactions, yes, most people, surprisingly enough, are happy. And our benchmark report we release every year shows that anything where a human's involved from IT is actually really good. So it motivates IT employees when they see the feedback they get indirectly about them, about how they've performed, about what they've delivered. You can definitely demonstrate value to the business. One of our customers, I mentioned the story earlier about we can no longer replace our devices every 3 years. They decided to sweat their assets for a number of other years until happiness and productivity dipped. Then they would swap them out. They were a 30,000 strong organization. Even if they had 20,000 laptops, you can work the math out. $1,000 a laptop, 20,000 people replacing every 3 years. It's something like $8 million, $7 million a year that they're spending on replacing kit. So you can definitely demonstrate your value to the business if you can make sure people are just happy and productive. It definitely improves collaboration with partners. There's a fear that partners won't go anywhere near this stuff, and actually they do. We work with most of the big MSPs and GSIs now. They're all now listening to ITXM. There's a belief that KPIs will suffer, bonuses will go out the window because suddenly we're focusing on happiness and productivity and no longer focusing on MTTR, first time fix rate, reassignment count, whatever it might be. That's absolutely not what we see. We see KPIs are maintained and improved. If you get happiness right, it's a mindset change where you do things very different, and it means that these KPIs carry on going upwards with it. So what about the problems with going ITXM? So I told you it challenges the status quo. It can feel a little bit scary for sure. There's concerns about how difficult it is to implement. Not my experience. It's effort for sure, but it's not difficult. You're going to potentially get pushbacks from service providers. That's lessening now for sure. It was definitely difficult 5-6 years ago. I remember we changed our global service desk and end user compute provider in an organization I worked at from one third party to another. And the first one said, absolutely not, no thanks, too subjective, not interested. Well, the other ones come forward and said, yes, please. The tens of $1 million contract went to them. And then I say the uncertainty around maintaining KPIs, that's not what we see. So what I'm trying to say is these cons are sort of myths, if you like. There's not much truth in these, other than the fact it is effort, but it's different effort. In fact, I did a podcast with one of our customers out in Australia recently, and hopefully it'll be published at some point, where I said to them, it's hard work, isn't it? And they said, yes, but it's the right work. That's the key. It's the right work to do. You can carry on escalation, frustration management, cost management, if you like, but it's the right thing to do. And it gets easier over time. So the ITXM route for us is the green pill is the truth. You finally see crystal clear what's going on in your organization when you start asking them in the right way, continually asking them. I think as Tanya said, you could ask someone on one day of the year and they could have a very different response. If you ask them all at once and it's a bad weather day, it's cold outside, does that mean every day of the year is like this? No, of course not. So we measure continuously, and that brings in results that do go up and down, but generally speaking, you see a baseline and an average come out of that, and you can see the dips and work with the dips. You can see the troughs, work with them, and you can see the peaks as well and celebrate those. So how do we go about this? I told you my why. I know why is a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but the reason why I did it, I told you this, that I wasn't willing to accept 80% of escalation time anymore, and the employees were not happy. So you're going to have your own why. From a ticket perspective, it's just what I said, but it could be the laptop one. It could be the enterprise apps one, where you're deciding to change a whole load of applications from one to another. So you've got your why. You understand what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to learn. Sponsorship. I've put a circle around this because once you understand your why, you'll have your sponsorship from someone in the organization to go and spend some money to do it, to go and put the resources behind doing it. But it's important to keep looking further than ticket-based. Ticket-based is one element, a really important element of it, and you can learn so much from it. But it's so important to get wider sponsorship, to look more widely in IT, look at the applications, look at the laptops, look at the devices, look at the mobile phones, look at the remote working, etc. Because that way you get a wider view. You're not narrow focused, and the more sponsorship you get, the easier it will be to stick in your organization. The easier it will be once you're measuring and feeding back and showing people the decisions you're making. So once you get that sponsorship, the direction's set. We're heading down this route, and things will change. Management of KPIs and SLAs will change. A view on whether they're good, bad, or ugly will change, and that's okay. But you've got your direction, and everyone's sort of singing from the same hymn sheet and in the same rowing the same way, should we say? You on board, you spend some time communicating. Really important that communication, employees know that they're being listened to. The biggest reason why people don't respond to surveys, by the way, is not survey fatigue. It's basically that they don't believe they're being listened to. They don't believe it makes a blind bit of difference if they click that number and click that factor and put some free text feedback in and submit in 30 seconds. If they don't believe that they're going to be listened to, it's going to make any difference, you can forget about them responding again. So that's the biggest reason why people don't. So the communication is absolutely key. Then we go into our ITXM framework inside Happy Signals, but this is a very common thing. Plan, do, check out's one, measure, share, identify, improve is another. This is ours. Measure, share, identify, improve, the end user in the middle, always thinking about the end user. Measuring every ticket, instant every request. Measuring people continuously about laptops and devices and enterprise apps and collaboration with IT, remote working, and the other measures we have. Making sure we're sharing that information out, setting up live screens. We've got customers who put live screens on big 50-inch screens inside their canteens to make it very public about what people are saying about their IT. They've got nothing to hide, good, bad, or ugly. They're gonna tell people what they're saying. Identifying improvements, and we see this again all the time. People say, "Well, actually, I'm scoring 9 out of 10 mark. I mean, there's nothing to be found here." But there is. The more you dig, the more you find. There's always something to find. In fact, we did a pilot with a very large global organization for 6 weeks. And they said, "Mark, we're going to have 4 weeks worth of data. We need to find something." This is our third attempt at doing ITXM. And frankly, people are getting frustrated with trying. We've got to make this work. We found something like in their laptops and computers pilot with a month's worth of data for one country, 32 improvement opportunities. With tickets, we found 24 ticket-based opportunities over 4 countries, one in Mexico, Germany, UK, and China. So you can always find stuff, no matter if your scores are really high, right? There is always stuff to find. And then you do your improvements, you make your decisions. And one box that's really missing from here is value. You know, the fact that you're making decisions to get value out of this. You're not just kicking that can down the road with your KPIs being green all of the time. You're making valuable decisions and delivering value back to your business. That's all I had, Alan.
Thank you so much, Mark. I would actually also say I was on a call with another global founding member this week, and they were saying, you know, exactly what you were echoing just now, is if you really take people seriously and they see that you're doing something with the input, they've seen their response rates go up to, I think it was like 30%.
Absolutely, yeah. But on that note, Alan, it's really important to recognise as well that we're dealing with humans, right? And when we look at laptops and computers, something that's very, very sensitive to people having problems with it, you'll see 30, 40, 50% response rates in a heartbeat. Whereas if you ask them about some application, they may not be interested. It's almost like if I get a survey about my gas supply to my house, I don't care who supplies me with gas. It's gas, right? But I do care if you ask me about my boiler performance and the noise of it. Yeah, so I'm more likely to reply to the boiler one than the gas supply. So that, do you know what I mean? If that makes sense in IT.
Yeah, and so we do have a question for you from Nola Muir, who's an IT executive at Discovery Limited in South Africa, and she asks, the lost time metric, is it customer perception based or based on technical data?
It's absolutely perception based. So what we drag into Happy Signals is the MTTR data out of your ITSM tool. So we have both. We have what the ticket says, which is often start time to resolve time, subtract all of the on hold time, and it comes out at a ticket that takes 6 weeks really looks like 25 minutes, right? So we get that, but then we ask the employee, what's your perceived time of lost time on this ticket? And that'll be the moment that they realise that the thing don't start up, the moment that they pick their phone up and they had to try and ring someone, couldn't find the phone number, had to ring their boss, who do I need to call for IT? And then all of the bit in the middle where they couldn't work, potentially, and then at the end, getting back to business. And you'll be surprised how often the two are very different. Yeah. So it's,
No,
it's
yeah. So Nola, do you have any comments on that? Is that answering your question, or would you like to add something or share a perspective?
Hi, thanks so much.
There you go.
I am unmuted now.
Hey.
Thanks for that response. I just wanted to check. So, if it is completely perception based, how do you quantify that to business?
So what we can say is that we certainly present that in the data to the business, and we say, for example, on average, we're never going to go there and say Fred said he spent 5 hours 62 minutes or 52 minutes on this. We're going to say that the average lost time in this month or this week or this day is X, and it's surprising how nearly all organisations are pretty similar, right? So I think it's 3.5 hours per incident ticket is the perceived lost time from an employee. Then what we say is we say you want to, as you lift the happiness up, generally speaking, it's almost like Africa and South America, right? You can, if you put the plates together, they match identity, they fit. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. It's the same with happiness and lost time. As happiness goes up, typically lost time goes down. So we present that data. I'm more than happy to show you at some point if you ping me. I'm happy to show you how it all works. But we look at the ticket based from a this instant cost you this much time, this request costs you this much time. And from the other proactive areas, it's how much time do you lose in a typical month. For example, it takes my laptop 5 minutes to start up every day. So it's 5 times 20 days, right? And then we can see if we can bring that down. Yep.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
So thank you both. Thank you, Mark, and thank you.